Just a couple more minutes and then we can get started. Okay, Pat, do you want to take off the main screen?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Can everyone hear me well? Pat, can you hear me well?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. Let's get underway. So welcome all to our first panel event at the UCL M&A Group. Today we'll be talking about Spring Weeks. The structure of the event is as follows. We'll start with a round of introductions and then go straight on to how to tackle the process, key motivations, and also we'll make time for questions at the end and also allow our panelists to cover the experience of actually doing this program. If you do have a question, please use the chat function and I'll call on you at the end. And just some housekeeping, please remain on mute for the remainder of the talk until questions at the end. And also the talk will be recorded, so bear that in mind if you do have your camera on. So my name's Alex, I'm the head of the Consumer Retail and Leisure team at the UCL M&A Group, and I will be moderating this panel discussion. Patrick, if you could introduce yourself and then we'll go around.
Yep, sure. Cheers for that, Alex. So I'm Patrick and I'm the co-founder of the UCL M&A Group. And a little bit about me, I'm studying economics and business with East European studies. I'm in Berlin and I'll be heading to Russia from January. And I did springs at Rothschild, McKinsey and Lazard.
Perfect. Aemilia?
And I'm in my third year of chemical engineering right now. I did Spring Weeks at Morgan Stanley and Credit Suisse, and I also got offers from BNP and from Evercore as well.
Okay, Platini?
My name is Platini. I study econ and stats in the stats department. In terms of what I want to do, investment banking like everyone else. I had a spring week at Goldman Sachs, and yeah, I look forward to speaking to you guys soon.
And finally, Laura.
Hi, so my name is Laura. I'm the sector head of industrials at the UCL M&A Group this year. I'm a second year mathematics and physics student. And in terms of Spring Weeks, I was really lucky to complete springs with UBS, Credit Suisse, Citi, and Deutsche Bank, and also received offers from the Royal Bank of Canada and Fidelity.
Okay, so we clearly have a diverse panel group, but what we're here to talk about today is Spring Weeks. So first of all, Patrick, can you just go through what a Spring Week is and why it's important?
Yep, sure. So I think the Spring Week, obviously it's a week unless you're a lucky person such as Platini to get 2 weeks at Goldman Sachs. And typically it's just giving you an insight into, you know, the life of a banker and kind of the culture within the firm. So for example, for me, the program that I did at Rothschild, that was 4 days and centered around networking events and a group project in which we presented on a hypothetical M&A transaction. Obviously, it's important because you start meeting people from the firm and they also get to meet you. And then hopefully, if you're successful, it will result in a summer internship offer at the back of it.
Okay. And we're not just here to talk about Spring Weeks, we're also here to talk about why we all want to go into investment banking. So if we could just go around again and just talk about our motivations for wanting to be investment bankers. Shall we start with Laura?
Sure, I'm happy to kick off. So investment banking was not the most straightforward route for me, especially coming from a math and physics background. However, I was looking for a way in which to apply more by numerical skills into something that was more real life. And also really enjoy the diversity, not of industries that you get in investment bank. You pretty much get to work on deals of any type that you're interested to. And I think it's really fun in general, as well as really fulfilling once a deal it's completed, you get to meet with the company. It's really client focused. So I was looking for something more engaging, which it's.
Aemilia, I know you're also not from a finance background. Why did you want to go into investment banking?
Sure. So I'm doing engineering right now. When I first decided that I wanted to do engineering, it was kind of just because I did like maths and sciences at A level, and I really enjoyed those. And I kind of thought I wanted to continue with it, but I didn't really have an idea of what job I'd like to do at the end. But I knew engineering was a good degree to kind of do something. And then really, I had no idea about banking or consulting or anything like that until I started uni. Like I'd never heard it. I thought a bank, like an investment bank, would just be like the retail banks you see on the street. And then I started just going to these like insight events throughout the year, of my first year, and starting to just get an idea of what it was. And I thought it was really exciting and interesting. I was quite drawn to the idea that it would involve more like relationship building than you get in, say, something technical like engineering, but that it would still have like some mathematical aspects to it. And then as I like went on throughout my second year, I started to kind of build my interest in understanding businesses. So originally I thought that I wanted to do sales and trading. And then I realized actually I really enjoyed kind of understanding how businesses work, and then the excitement of the deal and how that like fits into a business's like strategy. That kind of really interested me. So that's why I want to go into it.
Platini, I know you did a summer internship at, I think it was Wellington. So is your sort of pursuit of going into career in investment banking a new thing, or has it been a longer process of coming to that decision?
Yeah, I think I resonate with Aemilia. So I'm from a small town in Birmingham called Sanchez. So yeah, I came in university. I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I thought a bank, what it did was Lloyd's, like you put your money in, you take it out, like that's what it is, right? Because that's what I had in Birmingham. So I came in. I took a gap year actually, and I had a business in my gap year. I made like a little business selling PlayStation games online. So I had that kind of business kind of sense about me. And then at uni, I came in and everyone was talking about Spring Weeks. I just applied because everyone was applying. Let's not lie, like it's just something that everyone does. And then when I was researching more about it, I saw that the investment banking, what it does is it kind of helps businesses grow. And as I had like a small business as well, it's something that I think it's very key to my interests. And also having done the Spring at Goldman, I really like what they do, and I feel like their personalities are very close to mine. In terms of Wellington was great. I was working in investments in their European hedge funds on high yield fixed income. That was great, but I think that's not something to be done for someone so young, because these people are ex-bankers that go into hedge funds and they make trades, but as a junior, you want to be in an investment bank where you'll have your associate, your VP, whatever. You can learn from people. Whereas in there, you have a PM that's about 60. You have an associate that's like 30, and there's no one to teach you. You just have to kind of find your way around it. And I think somewhere like a big bank will be good for me.
I definitely agree with the learning curve being especially steep in investment banking. I remember when I was this time last year with Patrick talking about applying to Spring Weeks, one of the reasons he gave for going into investment banking was that ability to learn, and although you might fail sometimes, at least try to learn all these different models and how to create a pitch book and stuff like that. So moving on to Patrick, what other reasons were driving your decision to apply to these top investment banks?
Well, Alex, I can remember vividly our first year at university. We were in the same halls of residence, and I can remember everybody talking about spring weeks. And me and Alex were in for quite a surprise when we realised it wasn't some sort of UK equivalent of a spring break. So that was quite a depressing realisation. But for me, I think that I was quite fortunate in my first year. So I'm on a 4-year degree. In my first year, I had the chance to go and do a program at Deutsche Bank. It was called the High Yield Program. It was for students who were state school educated. And during that program, I was exposed to the leverage finance desk, and I learned a little bit about kind of, what the bank does and how they can advise their clients. And up until that time, I really hadn't kind of thought much about it. I knew I wanted to be in a sales related job or kind of client facing. I'd worked at Tesco's before, but I didn't want to be stacking shelves for the rest of my life. And so I kind of looked at that situation, and then I drew it back to a personal experience. So my mum, she used to own a small kind of clothes shop in Brighton. It didn't do very well. It went bankrupt. I can remember it. I was around 8 years old. And so I looked back at that experience and I related it to banking and thought, well, clearly my mum would have benefited from advice. I wanted to do the same thing and advise clients, albeit on a more kind of global scale. And I also had my language element. I can speak almost fluent German and Russian. So I wanted to be able to advise on cross-border transactions as well, which excites me.
And we have almost 100 participants in this call today, all applying for a limited number of positions. And one of the key things is to stand out. So just to go around again, how did you guys stand out? How did you guys beat the competition and secure your springs? Should we start with Aemilia this time?
I think this is actually something that I used to really stress about when I was first applying, because I remember thinking, like, all of these people I know are applying. Why would I get picked over any of them? And I think when you get a couple of rejections, you can really start to wonder, like, why would I stand out? Why would I get picked? So it's a great question, I think. I think, first of all, you want to hit like the base level of things that you need to get in. So don't give them any reason to reject you. That means you need no errors in terms of formatting, spelling, wording, like just get it perfect. And then beyond that, to actually stand out, I think like just bring you to your application. So both in the cover letter, your CV, and actually when you're in the interview as well. Like, don't, I think there's a lot of people make this mistake of like, they imagine what an investment banker is. And they're this like cool, suave person. And realistically, if you try and pretend that you're this person and you don't bring yourself to your interviews and your cover letter, you're not going to stand out. If you show that, maybe you're into like a certain sport, like I do cheerleading, I could talk about that in there, or that I run this volunteering organization, that like shows your personality more. And like, I'm a smiley person, so I would like to like smile in interviews, like get along with the interviewer. I think if the way you stand out is by really showing your personality beyond just having the basics perfect.
No, yeah, I completely agree. I think a lot of people go into an interview like trying to sell themselves, saying they're analytical and they're a team player and they're a leader, and everyone says that. But it might be true. So Platini, obviously you study economics and statistics, or in mathematics, statistics, and you are clearly quantitative and analytical. Do you sell yourself on those merits, or do you, as Aemilia said, try and find other things that make you unique?
No, because I mean, if you look, most people at UCL have got good grades, and that's the same across Nottingham, Warwick, LSE, all the rest. Like everyone has good grades, at least an A or something. So no, I don't think so. I think what I say sometimes is I'm quite honest, because I took a gap year, and in my gap year I worked in a factory. I did like a night shift for like 2 days, and I will say this, like I was stock picking when I was like 18 or whatever, and I say this because I used to play football, and me playing football and also doing that when I was 18, and people like hear about that. That's what people care about, because you become more relatable. Like, oh, they're like, oh, this guy had a real job. Like, you know what I mean? He's not just here saying, I'm smart, I'm intelligent, I got 10 A stars, I got 5 A stars. You know what I mean? Like, everyone has that. So, and I think that's one key. And I think the other one is trying to, like, not trying to fake, because a lot of people fake, and people think I should be something that I'm not. And me, I'm what you get. I am just a guy from Birmingham, and yeah, you shouldn't try to change yourself or whatever. Just be yourself, be who you are, and people like that, and people can tell when you fake as well. Like, it's very easy. So don't try to be someone that you're not. Just be yourself. I don't know how helpful that is, but another thing that I'd say, maybe when it comes to video interviews, what I do is the first question is key, because the person that's reviewing your application, the first question is probably the one that he's going to look at. So you should have a very opening, joyous kind of, hey, my name is this, like, shout out your voice, because that's the key thing that can differentiate you. But they don't get to the fifth question. They'll look at the first, second questions. That's the key ones that can, that make an impact on people. Yeah.
Just on the application and video interviews and tests, Laura, do you have any other sort of key tips like that?
I think just don't overstress too much about it. As Aemilia said, they care much more about who you are as a person than more of the technical side. So just try to be as personable as you can. And if you miss out any of the question, even if it's like the first really important question, like, just don't worry about it. Keep going along. And try to present your best self. I think apart from that, what I did is I tried to do as much research on the companies as possible. I remember the first weeks going to a lot of the insight events and welcome days at the companies, and I found that really useful just to get a better understanding of the culture, what the day-to-day of the analysis, and see whether it was something that I actually enjoyed. So that would be my other key tip.
And Patrick, do you have anything to add to that on what your key tips are on video interviews and also telephone and in person as well?
I think it's a difficult question, because I think the one thing that you all need to take out of the Spring Week process is that you will get rejections. So, I can't sit here and say that every video interview that I've done, I've received an offer from, because I've received countless rejections. So all I can say is that there is an element of luck, but I think that what everyone has said, showing your personality is key. And one thing I will leave you with, this year, actually, I did my conversion interview for Rothschild on the camera, and I was in Berlin, and I made a stupid mistake, and I got the timings wrong. And 10 minutes into the interview, I got a call from HR. The two managing directors were waiting for me. I ran into the interview, into the Zoom call, no tie on, and I sat there. And I just said, guys, I am so sorry. I've made a massive mistake. I really am really sorry. And from then, they accepted it. They saw that I was sorry. I ended up doing a deal presentation on beer, because I love beer. And it was just, so you just got to be personable and just be human, really, because everyone makes a few mistakes. Don't go in there acting as if you're the best, because they'll kind of pick up on that straight away. So just go in there and try and build a rapport.
Rejection is a really important part of the process and knowing how to deal with it. For those of you who don't know, I didn't actually get a Spring Week. Fortunately, it worked out in the end, but I got applied to 30 different banks and I got 30 different rejections. So Laura, how I'm sure you've obviously been very successful, but there would have been rejections as well. How did you deal with it? How did you bounce back?
I think just go on the Nets application and focus on what the Nets goal is. Also try and ask for feedback as much as possible and see what area you could have done better. Where it is if in the video interview you got a bit nervous, try and practice that in front of a camera. If it was on the numerical test, try to do some of the other practice tests. So it's just not focus that much on well, I didn't get that offer, but try to look of all the other opportunities that you still have available for you and look at what areas of improvement you still can count on.
Aemilia, do you agree with that, or do you have a slightly different strategy?
Yeah, so as I said before, like rejections are quite a hard part of it. I think especially when you're first starting, because at least I like doubted myself a lot. So I think at every rejection, like maybe I'm not right for this role. And I think you just have to fight back against that thought and say, well, you know what, I'm just going to give it my all and then see if I do get something. And there are so many you can apply to that if you do make a mistake on one, you don't get it. You make a mistake on another, you don't get it. There's still so many more. But the way I kind of like dealt with them is that after every interview that I had, whether it was like one that I was successful in or not, I had like, and I've still got the notes on my phone, so I'd make like a note and I'd put down like what went well, what went wrong, like what I'd do differently next time. And then every time I had an interview, I would look back through all my notes and they were like quite critical. So the ones that I actually ended up getting offers for, I put this like huge list of things I did wrong. But like I found that really useful for instantly transforming the way I thought about it from, oh, I messed up so badly in that interview, of feeling down about it, to like, I can now use that to know for next time I'm not going to do that. So that's kind of how I dealt with it constructively.
Yeah, no, that makes complete sense. I think a lot of the time we can pin it on ourselves, and it can be quite a personal process because we think almost like our personalities are being attacked. But like Patrick said, I agree with the statement being that there is a lot of luck in the process as well. The interviewer might have just been having a bad day and he's taking it out on you. So yeah, just try and keep your head up as much as possible and try and, as Aemilia said, try and use all the feedback constructively to maximize your chances of getting a spring week or a summer or a grad job. Just changing the sort of the type of question now and making it more specific to our panelists. Patrick, I know you did the high yield program at Deutsche Bank, but you also have experiences at Lazard and Rothschild. What are the different cultures like, the bulge bracket versus EB? And what ultimately made you decide that Rothschild is the bank for you?
Yes, so I think that's a good question. I mean, when I was at Deutsche Bank, I was able to spend, it was 2 days in June at the offices and then 2 days in September. And the one thing that I found a little bit challenging for me personally was that if I were to have been at Deutsche Bank, which I think is a fantastic firm, I really liked everyone I met there, but there was around 40 people on the desk and it was a very large kind of team environment. And for me, I'm quite into kind of smaller and more intimate workspaces. So, you know, for sixth form, instead of going to the large local sixth form, I stayed on at school, which had around, you know, a quarter of the capacity. And I quite like that sort of thing. So for me, when I was at Rothschild, I got that feeling that I would kind of have more responsibility and I would be in a smaller team, and that would just enable me to kind of enhance my skill set more. I think it's very different. I think that you would still enhance it fantastically, obviously, at a bulge bracket. I just think that at Rothschild, I would have got a more unique experience for me because I would have been working on more things at the same time.
Definitely. And Laura, you got 4 internships, 4 spring weeks at bulge brackets. Why do you think maybe your applications were stronger there, or why ultimately did you focus your applications there? And what was it like during those experiences?
So I think that's a really good question in terms of why I liked this bulge bracket and maybe a bit larger firms. It's because of the way in which they approach their clients. They're really global companies, so I think the size of the deals and transaction that they make, it's pretty unparalleled. I think also because sometimes maybe a smaller firm might be focused on just one specific area of business and they really get strong expertise in that. Whereas I think that's also related to a bit of my background. I wasn't too sure on what I wanted to do exactly. So I think at a large bulge bracket, I will get the opportunity to just get, but I think there's not one typical like bulge bracket, the same way as there's not like one typical American or European bank. I think it depends a lot on the team in which you're located with, and the relationships that you build there.
I think the team is super important because no matter the reputation or whether it's an EB or bulge bracket, ultimately your team has a culture. And obviously it is shaped by the type of bank you work at, but this team is super important no matter what bank you do work at. And I'll be remiss if I didn't ask Platini about Goldman Sachs, arguably the most notorious investment bank. What was the experience like there, and why do you think the spring week is in fact 2 weeks and not one?
In terms of what was the experience, it was good. Like, it was really good. We were given a buddy for the 2 weeks. We had a project to do. I did mine on a financing thing of an airline company. I think HR tried to keep it 2 weeks because originally it was meant to be in the office, but due to COVID, it was all online. But originally, what happens is that it's quite fun because when you get there, they give you a badge and you're actually a employee or something for 2 weeks, which is good. So they tried to make it more they try to integrate you a bit more as if you feel part of the actual employees. I think that is why they make it 2 weeks. But it was a fantastic experience. I think anyone should apply. And also, there's a program that they have that if anyone qualifies, they should look online. It was called the Making Possible Academy, but this year it's called the Student Possibilities Academy. I was part of that as well. And that's just a way with which you get a mentor that's quite senior in the bank. He's a partner or a MD, and you get to speak to them and they just mentor you through your time there. So yeah, anyone in the chat wants to apply through the Student Possibilities Student Possibilities program. Yes, it's been rebranded. So yeah, defo, it was excellent. Thank you.
And just a follow-up question on specifically the Goldman Sachs application process. Goldman is renowned for having their 300-word cover letter, and I can't imagine how hard it is trying to get all the sort of relevant information and trying to make yourself sound unique in the cover letter. Do you have any tips for that?
I think what I did was I had 3 paragraphs, each 100 words each, I think. The first one was why me. I just said, oh, Platini, blah, blah, this is why I want to do this. And this is my experiences. The second one was why I want to do, because you have 3 options. You can pick between IBD, securities, something else. And then you should only focus what HR has told me. You should always focus on one, your most favorite. So you should say, have a paragraph from why M&A or why IBD. And then the last one, probably why Goldman. That way, because people think you have to have a cover letter for every division because it's a free thing. No, you just have to have 1 or 2 that you like, and yeah, that's how it works.
And just going back to culture, Laura, you interned at American bulge brackets as well as European bulge brackets. I was just wondering, was there a obvious difference in culture, or were they pretty similar because of the type of bank they were?
I think it's relatively similar. Maybe one thing that I will say more on the American banks, maybe they have a more aggressive approach, and the European banks is because it's more, they're more collaborative and more establishing those kind relationships. But I think it really depends on the bank as well.
Platini, could you agree with that? Does Goldman have a more aggressive approach?
I don't know. I don't think so. I think that's a misconception because, I was mentored by a senior partner of the firm, and he was so nice. He was actually quite a nice, lovely, middle-aged man. He was really, really nice. He was very personable, and of course, the kind of people that come into banking are very motivated. Have done one in school, so of course you'd have a lot of competition, but I think that's anywhere you go. I don't think you should just brand a company because they're the biggest or maybe have a reputation. I think anywhere you go, you'll find some people that are ambitious. It's all about how you deal with it. And I think you'll also find people that are quite nice and that are quite down to earth and genuine. Yeah.
I think it also goes down to the people you work with, and sometimes it is luck of the draw, the people you do work with. And like Platini said, sometimes you have to navigate those more difficult people. But Aemilia, what was the experience like at Credit Suisse? Were there any difficulties?
Yeah, so I only did 2 of the spring weeks that I got offers from because of COVID and stuff. So I guess I can only really like contrast those. So at Morgan Stanley, it was mainly like presentations, networking sessions. And at Credit Suisse, they did a whole program of things. So we had networking sessions, presentations, but we also had some like simulation activities. So because it was for like all of the front office positions, there was a trading simulation on one of the days, and there was also an IPO simulation. And I actually found that really, really useful because, as I mentioned before, I thought originally I wanted to do sales and trading. And I realized throughout the spring week and doing those activities that I wasn't a great fit for sales and trading, but I was for investment banking. So I found that really, really useful. There were definitely, so you said like difficulties, there were definitely a few aspects throughout those kind of simulations that I found challenging. So to pick one out, actually, during the IPO activity, which I really enjoyed, it was group work, and we had a really limited amount of time to prepare a presentation to pitch like you're on an IPO roadshow. And we then had a really short presentation slot as a group, and we hadn't had a chance to actually run through the presentation. And then when we came to present, I ran over a little bit on my section. And I remember after, when we like regrouped in our groups, someone in my team was basically really angry with me for going slightly over, and like I had to just kind of deal with that. And in the moment it felt bad, but that was something which then I could talk about after in like a conversion interview. So I would say, if you're doing a spring week and these kind of like challenges or problems come up, see them as an opportunity to deal with them, think about them, and then you can talk about it if you have a conversion interview. I think I went on for quite a while there, but I hope that was helpful.
Definitely. Something that can be quite awkward is networking, particularly if you're reaching out to people you don't really know on LinkedIn, asking if you can meet up with a coffee. I know, Patrick, you've been quite successful networking over LinkedIn. So could you just talk a bit about that and how you were ultimately successful in getting these coffee chats? And also, why is networking important to securing a spring week? Okay.
All right. I think that's so LinkedIn, obviously, great platform, very, very nice platform. But I think that you do get rejections even when it comes to a coffee chat. Obviously, I think that at the moment you guys have a unique opportunity because meeting somebody in person obviously requires more effort. So now you can literally message somebody, and my advice would be, now find somebody who either went to UCL or somebody who might have gone to your school or whatever, and then you can send them a message and be like, hey, look, I'm really keen about learning about your firm. I know that you're incredibly busy at the moment, but could you please possibly spare me 20 minutes on Zoom so I could ask you a couple of questions? And a lot of the times they will say yes. And what the benefit of doing that is that when you do your interview, if you get one, fingers crossed, everyone here will, and they say to you, for example, with me, why Rothschild, I can say, okay, one reason is X, one reason is Y. And finally, having spoken to this person from the firm, it absolutely confirmed to me that the culture is fantastic and that I'd get on well with your employees. And then all of a sudden you're dangling the light in front of the dog, if you know what I mean, or the bone, whatever the phrase is, I forgot, but still it's important. And the only other thing I'd say, and obviously I'm aware that the spring week process is moving on quite rapidly, if you can apply for networking events, lots of firms do them. I remember actually being with Alex at the Proella Weinberg networking event last year, where we were chatting with the ex CFO of Deutsche Bank. And again, you can get LinkedIn connections from there, and often it can lead to coffee chats. So I'd strongly advise you check the firm's details for those events.
And we focus a lot on the application to try and secure a spring week, but we haven't actually talked much about the actual experience itself and what the day-to-day is like. So Laura, what was the day-to-day like during your spring weeks, and was it significantly different between them?
I think it was quite different by firm, especially because of the timeline. So, for example, with Deutsche Bank, it was only 2 days, so it was really packed in terms of activities. It was really engaging, and for example, they had a much more cultural approach. So every one of us shared a picture of what we were doing during lockdown, and some tips on how to just stay positive during COVID, and we did sessions on that. For example, some of the other difference with Citi, we got an overview of all areas of the bank. Even if I did my spring for investment banking, I had some sessions with some people from tech, from sales and trading. So I found that really interesting. But yeah, in terms of the activities, again, some more engaging than others, some more based on culture. But overall, that was the general structure.
Patrick, at Lazard and Rothschild, did you have a similar sort of experience with case studies, and how are the experiences different, if they were at all?
Yes, so to be honest, I was very surprised about how rigorous the actual programs were at both firms. So if I start off with Lazard, for example, around a week before the program started, they sent us a kind of comprehensive guide, which put us into groups of around 5 students, and gave us our project debriefing. And it was a 5-day program. And on the first day, in fact, no, it was 3 days. Sorry, it was 3 days. But then on the first day, we actually looked at what the project was going to be. We had to advise we had to advise a private equity firm on whether or not they should sell a real estate firm that it was holding. And they gave us literally everything from broker reports, the financial statements, annual reports, everything. And they just said, you're going to do a 10 slide presentation to 2 MDs in 3 days time, and here you go. And I mean, we were working till probably 1, 2 in the morning most nights, and it was tough as well, because we had to make sure it was aesthetically looking good. We had to bring in financials, so it was a tough week. And Rothschild was exactly the same. The only difference with Rothschild was that everyone did different deals. So my group, we were working on Amazon and Centrica being the energy company which owns British Gas, and they just asked us, should the 2 companies merge together, come up with a PowerPoint presentation. And again, yeah, it definitely gave you a flavor for the job, and it was challenging, but it was good fun.
That also sounds super interesting. I would like to thank the panelists for giving up a bit of their time to do this panel discussion today. We're now going to open the floor to your questions. So I will call on you, and if you want to answer the question, then just unmute yourself and you can answer it. And if you don't, there'll be a little pause and I can read it out for you. So first of all, let's have a look. Okay, David Zazo, I think your question is directed at Platini, if you want to unmute yourself.
Hi. There was I wrote a couple of ones. Let's just see. There was one where I was asking about the culture, and like Platini was talking earlier about Goldman, but I think that's perhaps been covered already by everyone talking about the different cultures at the places. The one specifically about Goldman, though, the other one, you talked about just choosing one division, mentioning one division when you're talking about cover letters. I was wondering, did you mean that you choose one division in your application, or that you're just focusing on one division in your cover letter?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, the way the Goldman process works is that you apply to three. I mean, you have the ability to apply to a maximum of three positions, and obviously everyone applies to three because it maximizes chances. Kind of simple statistics there. So yeah, and the cover letter, it's quite short. It's for only 300 words, and the reason why I said you shouldn't make the cover letter for all the three because there's not a lot of space. So let's say you really want to be a banker. So yeah, you should use that space to tell them why I really want to be a banker. And then let's say if you're smart or something, you want to be a banker, maybe you want to be a trader as well. You can kind of combine the two and do it, but there's not enough space to write, oh, I want to be a banker, a trader, a wealth manager, an asset manager. It seems a bit lost because it's reviewed by different HR from different divisions. And I actually have a friend who applied to IBD, but he actually got securities and his cover letter was all IBD. So at the end of the day, if they see a good candidate, like it's not the end of the world. The other ones will always like come back to you if they think that you're good. Yeah.
Oh, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, David, for your question. We have a question from, I think it's Ardia. Apologies if I'm pronouncing your name wrong. It's about CVs and structuring them and cover letters. If you want to unmute yourself, you can do now. Okay, no worry, I can answer your, ask your question. Would you mind going into a bit more detail regarding standing out on CVs and structuring cover letters and any specific things that you think made your application successful? So CVs and cover letters. Aemilia, what made your CV stand out?
Sure. So I guess for mine, when I was applying for Spring Weeks, actually, I didn't have a lot of relevant experience. I think that's something important to emphasize as well. You don't need to, if you're not from a finance background, like it's good to have something that shows that you have an interest, if that's like being in a committee role in a finance society or something like that, that's great. But if you don't have that, it's not the end of the world. Like, just do some things that you find interesting. So I think you wanted specifics. So to give some examples, when I applied to Springs, I was involved in organizing the UCL TEDx conference that was on there. I was involved in this G3 Energy Summit, and then Project Impactum, which is a nonprofit organization. So none of them are actually related to finance, but when it came around to the interview, I was able to talk about them all like really passionately when they asked me about them, and they did ask me about them. So I'd say like just have interesting things that you do that do like enable you to learn different types of skills. And I think it's important to try and get a wide range of skills on there. So for example, like part-time jobs are also really great. Like I worked, when I actually am from Birmingham as well, I worked in like a garden center. Yeah, I worked in like a garden center back there and science museum. And so all of these experiences basically give you lots of different skills that they can then see, and you want to demonstrate that. It doesn't have to be finance related. And I think that makes you stand out because it's like, it makes you an individual. And then with the cover letter in terms of structure, I think everyone kind of knows the standard structure. It's similar to the Goldman, you just want to have like 3 paragraphs. Don't make it too long. So like, why me, why the firm, and like why investment banking? And then to be honest, so you want to make every cover letter tailored, but you only really need to tailor the why the firm paragraph, but just make it really, really tailored. So do your research, and then get the rest of it like on point, and you can just use it over and over. I think that's kind of all my tips on that.
I think I definitely agree with trying to get stuck in with as many roles and responsibilities as you can handle, because I think especially when after Springs and applying for summers, you're only competing against people who are second years, you're also competing against third years, and you're also competing against European students with 2 masters and 5 internships. And realistically, you know, if you're a second year, you can't compete on like work experience alone because you just haven't had enough time to accrue it. So definitely roles and responsibility are key. Laura, do you have anything to add on making your CV stand out? Is there a particular structure, keeping it to 1 page, or Anything else?
I think on CV structure, just well, of course, you start with a bit of like your contact details and education, employment or any work experience. If there's not any, it's okay. You can go more into like leadership roles or society engagement in general. And then at the end, I have one part which is general interest. Or something that will make you stand out more as a person. So there, I talk about language. But languages. So I speak four languages, and then this summer I've been picking up Russian and Mandarin, or even sports. For example, Aemilia and I did cheerleading last year. So, like, of course, all of that, even if it doesn't. Same, the most important thing at the beginning, they really like at the bottom of the CV to look a bit of your interest, and then they will go and with everything with a different perspective.
Okay, and something that we haven't covered yet actually is technicals. So one question, I can't find it anymore, but to the person who asked Caroline Collins, if you want to unmute yourself.
Hi, thank you so far for everything you've covered. It's been really informative. Yeah, I was just wondering about the breadth of technical knowledge that you would need to pass sort of the final round interviews with senior bankers, or just once you get past the telephone interview stage, how are you supposed to maintain the kind of 30-minute long or 40-minute long interviews with those who obviously have a huge experience in the division to which you're applying, and how are you supposed to impress them with the limited knowledge that you have? Thank you.
Can I answer this?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Yeah, I think this is a key, yeah, I get what you mean, but I think in interviews, the most important thing I think is your personality. That's at least 85% of it. So if you're a nice guy, you're easy to talk to, you can make people feel welcomed, and you're not arrogant. Yeah, just have a conversation, talk about football. That's what I always talk about. I want to become a professional footballer, and that takes about 15 minutes at a time. And then he'll probably say, oh, well, why banking? Then he'll say, oh, okay, tell me what you know about technicals, or how do you value a company? I think what is really key is that there's a lot of guides online. I don't need to like tell you, there's a WSO guide. Go through that word by word, memorize that, you'll be fine on any technical. But what is key is that when you answer these questions, don't answer it in a stance that you know everything. You should always start by saying, oh, I'm not sure, but I think this is this. Oh, I'm not an expert. I've only self-studied this, but I think a DCF is a way to do this, and I think this is correct. Do you agree with me, or do you not? And then you make it more of a conversation. And then the person's more likely to, if you say something wrong, he's more likely to correct you, but kind of correct you in a good way and not take it from you. But if you come like very arrogant and say, oh, a DCF is this, and start talking for like 10 minutes about DCFs, you kind of lose people. So yeah, make it very short, snappy, and don't stress it. Like, yeah. At the end, I have a friend who just had an AC, and he walked into the AC. He told them, I don't know anything about investment banking in terms of technicals, but I can tell you why I want to be here. And he had an hour conversation about his passion for healthcare and how he wants to build pharmacies. And the guy was just like, this is a great guy. And yeah, and he didn't know any technicals. So yeah, just make sure you get your story across. That's more important than trying to show off on something that you clearly are not very well suited for, because you're only in first year or second year or something. Yeah.
Caroline, does that answer your question?
Yeah, that's really helpful. Thanks so much.
Also, just to add on a bit to that, you know, the sort of motivational questions always come at the beginning. And if you can nail, as Platini said, like the why use, the why investment banking, the why the sector, they're going to sympathize with you a little bit more. And the best interviews I've had, and I know Patrick has had as well, are the ones where, you know, you've been really honest and you've gotten off to a good start. And if you build a connection with your interviewer, they're not going to ask you the really nasty questions about the weighted average cost of capital or how to calculate the cost of equity and what beta is and stuff like that. The questions will be slightly more vague. And also, just one last tip on technicals. As Platini said, just go in being honest about your technical ability. And also, if they ask you to walk them through a DCF, you don't have to go through like the minute detail of every part of the equation. Everyone can remember what an equation is. Just understanding like why you use it and what the weighted average cost of capital is, or what free cash flow is, and why we're using this valuation method over other valuation methods, I think is more important than knowing like beta times cost of equity times whatever. Okay. And also just in terms, oh yeah, Aemilia, go ahead.
I think most of the time for spring week interviews, they don't ask you technicals though. Like at least most of the ones I did, especially if you're from a non-finance background. So don't worry about like memorizing everything necessarily for your spring week ones. They will understand. If you do have a finance background, they're going to expect you to know a bit because like you're meant to have studied this. But most of the time they won't. And to give an example for my BNP one, that was the only one where I had a kind of technical aspect to the interview. And this was actually for global markets at that point. But he had like a graph with like stock price, and he was asking me to like talk about like what kind of events could have triggered different things. And I said at the start, to be honest, like I'm from an engineering background, like I don't have that much technical knowledge, but I just tried to kind of reason through things. And then I ended up talking to him like for much longer than intended. And I was just asking him loads of questions because I genuinely found it interesting. So I would say like, don't worry so much at the spring week level about memorizing loads and loads of stuff, but as you kind of read the current affairs and stuff like that, Google stuff, so that you show that you have an interest level of knowledge. But I think at the spring week level, they're not going to expect you to know like the whole DCF or anything like that. Correct me if I'm wrong there, guys.
Yeah, Galuzis, just quickly, I wanted to just touch on that for a second. The one piece of advice that I would add is that for my Rothschild interview, for example, they actually asked us to create a PowerPoint on anything we wanted, right? So it was anything, and there was 8 of us in there. And I can remember to this very day, although it wasn't that long ago, one person showed me their presentation. They'd done technical analysis on a private equity company and everything. And they said, what have you done for your presentation? And I said, I've done mine on why I decided to learn Russian. And we walked in, he came out of his interview crying about how hard the questions were. And they just asked me, why Russian? Why not Mandarin, for example? And I got the offer the next day and the poor guy didn't. But so just don't put yourself into a bad situation.
Okay, our next question is from Jason Allen on the importance of applying early. Jason, do you want to unmute yourself?
Thank you for the talk. Found it really useful. I just want to know, in terms of, I hear loads of people saying that it's quite important to apply early, but how significant is it? And is there a disadvantage if you're, say, applying today compared to someone who'd applied like in September, for example?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I'm happy to answer that. So I think there is a big difference if they're on a rolling basis or if there's a deadline. If there is a deadline for the application, there is no advantage on applying early, just because they most likely will not start reviewing applications until after the deadline. If it's on a rolling basis, I will suggest yes, start applying a bit earlier. But I wouldn't suggest start with the company that or the bank that you're most interested in, because it's most likely that at the beginning you're going to make a couple mistakes and you might get a bit more experience and other leadership role that you can always use afterwards. So just try to put the ones that you're most interested in first at the middle, which is a mistake that I did. myself a bit. I applied early to a lot of them, and then I was a bit overwhelmed with tests. And then afterwards, I found out like, oh, it would have been great to have been able to mention this afterwards. So yeah, I wouldn't say to stress too much about this being the first one.
Does anyone else want to add anything on to the importance of applying early or the lack of?
I mean, I didn't apply that early to mine, to be honest. I think it's really good to apply early, but I was talking with one of my mentees about this the other day, and I think there's kind of if there's a graph, it goes like this, and this is the best time to apply. Like, you want to wait until you've got some good things to talk about in your interviews, but you also don't want to leave it so late. It also gets harder as the interviews get later in the process. Like, I know for some of mine, which were at the end, like they were saying to me, it's one of the later ones, so it's much more competitive. So yeah, it's kind of a balance. I think Laura covered everything there.
And that is it. Thank you everyone for joining today's panel discussion. Thank you to the panelists. And just a final note by me, is obviously very impressive if you get spring weeks, and there's a lot of rejection in the process. And we've gone through the importance of it. You know, it gives you a taste of investment banking. It also gives you an in if you do convert a spring week. But what I would say, it's not the be all end all. A lot of people get summers and graduate roles, including myself, without having spring week. So don't get too disheartened if you don't get a spring week. But yeah, once again, thanks everyone for joining. It's been a great panel discussion. I've really enjoyed it. I hope the other panelists have as well. And hopefully see you all soon for our next event.
And Alex, let's just do the photo quickly. If everyone can like put their cameras on, we're going to take a photo for our social media page. So if anyone wants to study, we'll do that now. If everyone just puts their camera on and does like a thumbs up or something like that, and then we're going to post that on our social media. So I know it's a bit, yeah, got to do it for the page basically. 1 second, let me just get it ready. Okay guys, everyone ready? Wait. Okay, fantastic. All right, cool. Well, cheers everyone.
Cheers. Thanks guys. Bye.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Well, Laura and Aemilia, I'll drop you a message later on, but thanks again, guys. Massive help. So yeah, I'll send a message in the group chat. All right, see ya.